Good morning. Look at that. 8 o'clock straight up. I was behind, and boom, I'm caught up. But I don't know if I can keep up the rest of the day, but we'll give it a shot, right? Anyway, I hope you're having a great morning. Today is Friday. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on Facebook, you can watch me on YouTube. It's you want to go subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's just Jeannie Olinger. I didn't put it in the ministry or nothing, just Jeannie Olinger. And if you subscribe to that, then I'm going to start putting some teachings up there soon. So some classes and stuff like that, Bible teaching and Bible studies. And so don't ignore my YouTube channel. There is one teaching up already that's not here on Facebook, so I'm kind of trying to spread it out. And I've always got ideas. So pray I get some direction, right? Anyway, thank you for joining me this morning. And I just woke up this morning with this chorus and thought in my head out of Psalm 95. And it says, we actually used to sing it when I was a worship leader way back years ago. I used to lead in this sometimes just kind of as a call to worship, right? And in Psalm 95:6 it says, "Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand." And so we pulled that out and made it a chorus. In the 70s, everything was a chorus, right? So we made everything a chorus in the 70s. So we sang that one a lot. That probably didn't come out till the 80s. I don't know. But anyway, um, and so I was just thinking about that this morning, and I was just overwhelmed with a sense of worship. I was overwhelmed with a sense of just loving God this morning, and just so thankful that He's just with me. You know, no matter what I face today, no matter what I faced yesterday, God doesn't leave, and we've talked about He doesn't have the capacity to leave us. He literally cannot forsake us. And so I was just in awe of that. And so I sat and thought about it. I read a little bit. I was just sipping my coffee this morning, just the first cup. And I thought, worship is an interesting thing. Now, the first mention of worship in the Bible is when Abraham took Isaac and laid him on the altar at God's command. And Isaac was his son, first off. I don't know how he did it. I don't know if I have the faith to do that, right? Should God require something that massive, that big of me? I honestly don't know. But I think, he was laying his promise on that altar when he put, and more than just his, that's big enough. It was his son, for crying out loud, right? But he so knew that the promise for him and all generations was going to come through Isaac. He laid his promise up there. He laid his future up there. He laid everything he knew God had promised him on that altar. He laid everything was on that altar because God asked for it. That is the essence of worship. You can't have worship without death. Worship isn't synonymous with music. I've said that before. Worship is more synonymous with death in a sense, because when we truly worship, something in us, those things that inhibit worshiping God, have to go away. We have to, and if you're like me, maybe you're not, hopefully you're not, I don't know. When I do just try to focus on worshiping and praising God, I got all these thoughts in my head and I have to shut all those down. Everything in me has to die for a minute. And so as I was thinking about the scripture this morning, I thought, we don't worship because of who we are. That's not the heart of worship. The heart of worship is who He is. So I backed up in the psalm a little bit. We worship God because He's God. We worship God because He's loving. He loves us. We worship Him because He is majestic. We worship Him because He created us. He gave us breath. He's worthy of that worship. It doesn't have anything to do with us. Literally nothing to do with us, right? So I looked back up in the psalm and see, that was so perfect, because the first 5 verses says this: "Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before His presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to Him with psalms. For He," and here's our why. "For the Lord is the great God, the great God, and the King above all gods." And I'll add this little phrase in here: all the gods we can make. Anything we can make, anything a god. Matter of fact, in America, Probably our biggest problem is we are our own gods. We have tended to worship ourselves, you know. And there's some, we want to have a good self image. We want to have a good self concept. We want to know who we are. But it's more important to have our image hidden in Him and let Him define who we are hidden in Him, right? Because that's the image of us that's going to last forever and ever and ever. And so we can make a God out of our vehicles, out of our kids. It doesn't even have to be something that we fashioned with our hands. And well, I never figured that out anyway. In Isaiah it talks about you take a tree and you cut it out and you set it up and oh, our gods that brought us out of Israel, out of Egypt. It's like, what? How would you even fashion something out of gold or silver or wood or any material and think it had anything spiritually any spiritual substance to it at all? I really don't get that. And yet, as Americans, it's easy to worship anything. We can worship our career, we can worship having money in the bank, we can worship our children, we can worship sports, we can worship pets. And when I say worship, I'm saying we're putting it ahead of we're giving it that spot of preeminent importance in our life, right? And so we can make a little g God out of anything, but no matter what God there is, if we go back in the old times when there's the pagans, and even now there's Hindu that worship Buddha and or worship Muhammad even, or worship whoever, whatever God you want to look at, little g God. God is the great king above all those. None of those weaken God. None of those other gods, whatever we make a God out of, none of those water down the gospel. None of those change the word of God. None of those even touch God's power. He's not sapped going, oh, if y'all worship these other gods, my power is going to leak out of, I don't know. Even if we make something into a God in our lives on any level, it doesn't affect God, it affects us. It makes us unable to accept who He is. It makes us unable to worship of the Spirit and in truth. It affects us, but it doesn't affect God. He is still the majestic, powerful, creative being He's always been. Now we can separate ourselves in that sense from His power and try to live by another power. We're going to get ourselves in a bind, but it doesn't weaken God's power at all. It doesn't change God at all. He's still the great king above anything you want to make a God in your life. In His hands, verse 4, are the deep places of the earth. In His hands. The heights of the hills are His also. The sea is His, for He made it. That's so simple. The seas are His because He made it. And His hands formed the dry land. And so we don't worship and praise and give thanks because of us. It's because of Him. It doesn't have anything to do with us. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're going through. It doesn't have anything to do with what our experience even. We worship Him and recognize and acknowledge that He is the God who made this earth. That and for me, I'm like, I need You in my life because I can't do this on my own. That's the essence of worship right there. Just knowing that He is God and I am not. It's really that simple. Knowing, just acknowledging my God. If you don't understand worship, just start with God. I know You created this earth. Wow, I know You're powerful. I know that You're there. That's where it starts. Those of you who are more mature have walked a life alongside Him and filled with Him and understand His great love for us. Then we begin to just worship Him because, God, thank You for speaking to me this morning. Thank You for walking through time with me. Thank You for never abandoning me. Thank You for opening Your word to me so that I can understand Your ways and not just Your deeds. And that brings us to the last part of the psalm. And I'm not going to make 10 minutes, but that's okay. Right after he says, okay, I've already just read verse 5. The sea is His, for He made it. That's so simple. I love the simple things out of the word like that. The sea is His. He made it. You know what? He made you too. But I'll just let that go. Okay. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. For He is our God. And we are the people of His pasture, the sheep of His hand. Then He says this, today if you will hear His voice, don't harden your hearts as in the rebellion, as in the day of trial in the wilderness when your fathers tested me. They tried me, though they saw my work. Okay, so we're talking about the children of Israel, and even if you've watched the Ten Commandments on TV, the old version they show every Easter, you'll see how the children of Israel just moaned and whined and complained the whole trip, right? And so this says that they tested God and they tried him. They saw his works. Now they had already seen the 10 plagues. It was, they saw that they lived through the 10 plagues that God sent on Pharaoh in the old, if you go back to Exodus and read that, he sent the 10 plagues, the flies, the water turned to blood, all these different things. So they saw what God could do, and yet they didn't trust him. Then he said, for 40 years, this is God speaking, for 40 years I was grieved with that generation because they didn't trust him. And he said, and I said, it is a people who go astray in their hearts. Listen here. And they do not know my ways. They knew my works, God said, but they didn't know me. So I encourage you today to find even just a minute to just get quiet before God today and be worshipful for a minute just because he's God. Give some thanks. God, thank you for walking through time with me. Thank you for blessing. Thank you for a home. Thank you for a job. Thank you for my family. Give some thanks. But just take a moment today to just go, God, I know you're God. I know you're the creator. I know you're there. No matter what level of maturity, because I got everybody who watches this, guys. I got some who are just becoming familiar with God or don't even know God at all the way to a very mature, seasoned ministers that watch. But you know what? God is the same God for all of us. He loves us so much, no matter where we are on our where we are maturity wise on our journey with him. He is always right there, and he is always worthy of worship. So today I encourage you, come, let us bow down, let us worship, let us kneel, and that's a heart position, but it doesn't hurt to kneel on the floor. Get on your face, it's okay. But let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. He made me. Y'all are stuck with me. He made me. He made you. Does that not just blow your mind? For he is our God. Just go back to him. No matter how far away you may have been or how close you feel you are, just run to him today and just go, you're my God. I will serve you. I will love you. I will let you work in my life. I want you in my life. And God will meet you there. I pray you have a great day today. I pray that you are blessed with and that he multiplies peace and grace and mercy and love in your heart today. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.